Hello, everyone. Good to see all of you. Well, you see me. I see you are already typing there in the chat room tonight. I have a fantastic live show planned for all of you, not just some of you, all of you tonight. Of course, you can see in the headlines tonight we're going to talk about an LA woman. LA woman. We're going to talk about a New Mexico mystery. I want to get into the topic of what is science when discussing disappearances. I'm going to have an example of a very, 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 very well-known disappearance to use, and a whole bunch of other stuff that I hope to get to before we part ways a couple hours from now. I hope everybody had a great week. It has been beautiful here in Clearwater Beach, Florida. The cleanup continues. It's going to be a while. Still kind of ugly out there. But little by little, we got a lot of dump trucks out here on the beach, taking sand to somewhere south of where I live. They're going down the beach that way. That would be that way. And I don't know what they're doing down there. I suppose if I was really curious, maybe I could do that tomorrow. Walk down and see exactly what they're doing. But in big dump trucks, like big dump trucks, like all day from 8 in the morning until 5, just making this big circle, dumping, going down there filled, coming back empty. They're doing something. So I've been watching that. And I'll get into some other things here in a moment. As you are watching tonight, I never want to forget to tell all of you, please give this video a thumbs up. I would appreciate it. If you are new, if you've just found Unfound for the first time, whether on Spotify, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, wherever, found the channel, found the Facebook page, the group, and you're now finding the YouTube channel, please subscribe by hitting the little button there in the bottom right-hand corner. If you'd like to contribute to what we do here, donate. If you'd like the work that is done here, if you support it, consider going to patreon.com/Unfound Podcast or paypal.me/Unfound Podcast, or hitting the join button below if you are watching on YouTube. But that button only appears depending on what kind of phone you have or tablet or whatever. And then the other way, and in fact, I think maybe a couple people have already done this tonight, just 4 minutes into the show, is you can hit the super chat button, which is over there by the chat box, the comment box, and you can use the super chat button to contribute to what we do here. So let's see who is here. Sarah. How are you doing, Sarah? Good to see you. You're in first tonight. No wonder you were like 35 minutes early. Good for you. Then Toad, how are you? Charles. Lisa. Lisa signed up to your membership. Thank you so much, Lisa. I cannot thank you enough. Lisa has signed up for 4 more months of extra stuff right here on YouTube. That's what that green box means. If you're seeing that, Lisa's doing good things there. Lisa, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Amy, good evening to you. And thank you once again, Lisa. You are generous. And as you can see, my little comment, if I look a little different, maybe a little clearer than usual, I got a new Mac computer. I'll get into that here in a little bit. And Kathy, good to see you. A longtime supporter, listener of Unfound. Kathy, good to see you. Hazel, New Zealand coming into us tonight. Raymond, Stephanie, Suzanne, Veronica, Dee Dee, Leanne, Sharon, And you must be on the new Mac, Ed, looking scarily like you're in the room. Yeah, the camera is decidedly better on this one, even though the old Mac computer camera was okay, certainly better than my HP. But yeah, I can certainly see the difference is stark. Hey, so Rockford, what's going on, Rockford? Thank you. Love the regular and extra stuff. Thank you, Rockford. And better camera indeed. Yes. All right. So maybe we'll talk about that since everybody's noticing. Yeah, what happened is, if you'll remember last week, had to do the live show with my HP, which is over here right now. And the camera on that, even though that HP is only a couple years old, the camera on it is not good. There's no way to make it good. You can't even fiddle around with maybe there is an app or something, but just haven't spent a lot of time on it. But the other problem with it is that it doesn't adjust to light. You know, this, the camera on the old Mac, which is sitting right here, and the new one, I have these LED lights, you know, to make me look pretty. And if I were to use those with my HP, it totally whites me out. The whole screen would just be white. Even just using one light's too much. So I have to put the kitchen light on, turn off everything, and then it kills the quality of it. I just can never find a happy medium with this HP, even though otherwise it's been a good computer. But what happened with the Mac, as I think I told you last week, I was trying to do surgery on it, and the patient did not live. And I probably am eventually going to get it fixed as a backup or something. We'll just have to see. But I made the decision. I'm just getting a new refurbished Mac, and it got here. And I got here on Thursday, just a couple hours before I did the show with Dr. Telesco on Thursday evening. And I had to download, you know, because, you get used to a computer and you've downloaded all these apps and you have all these programs and everything else. And then you get a new one and none of that's on there. And I had to make sure it's going to work with this microphone. And I had to get Zoom and on and on and on and on just to be able to do that show last Thursday. And then on top of that, I had not even started on Friday's episode as far as recording it yet, because I had to download GarageBand and iMovie and all those things to this computer. So Thursday was a hectic day. Luckily, the computer got here at about 11 a.m. or something like that. So, but I got this. I'm loving it. It is refurbished. It's not new. Got it refurbished. And it's been great so far. Last week's episode that came out Friday was made on it, recorded, edited, and everything. And of course, that's the way this Friday will be as well. And that's what you're looking at right here. And the old Mac was a 2017. This is refurbished, so it's not 2024. I think this Mac is somewhere, 2022 maybe. It's not 2024. So the increase in the quality of the camera is not 7 years worth. It's only maybe 4 years worth or something like that. But that is what you're seeing, because really I'm not doing anything different. It's the same lighting and everything else. There's no changes. And I like it because, of course, the reason the other one was getting worked on, I worked on it, tried to fix it, because the battery just would not hold a charge anymore. If I unplugged the computer, it would be dead in 5 minutes and it would not recharge. So, and it had been like that for a while. And I thought, well, maybe I'll go the cheap route. And people do just put new batteries in them. You have to do, take it apart and everything. Yeah, mine didn't go that well. So just decided, got a new one. So here we are. And I am loving it. Rockford says, I thought it was because I had cleaned my screen. Yeah, you might want to do that once in a while, Rockford. No, and no, I haven't gotten a facelift. I haven't had my eyes done or any Botox or anything. It's all camera. Lisa, that was a great show with Dr. Telesco discussing the Moman disappearance and discovery. Yeah. It was. I enjoyed talking to her. It was good. So that is the computer situation. And I'm sure you'll get used to it in no time. And you'll even forget this is. You'll just be looking at the screen. Oh, it always looked like that. Not so. Some other things that have gone on with me since we all got together last. I didn't go to the doctor. Well, I kind of went to the doctor. But we just did a telemedicine on last Wednesday conference. And unfortunately, very sadly, my doctor, Dr. Kareen, his office got flooded during Hurricane Helene. And I think he's still in the process of putting that all back together. And I think he's like, I guess he's probably having an office somewhere or temporary or something. But I'm pretty sure when I talked with him last Wednesday, he was at home. He was working from home, and so we went over some things. My blood got tested. As is usually the situation, everything is in line, except I continue to have a very, it's an ongoing cholesterol issue. I do take generic Lipitor. I've been doing that for many, many years. The LDL cholesterol is always just right out of the range by like a couple, milliliters or whatever, how they measure it. It's always just out of the range. But my good cholesterol is in the good range. And my total cholesterol, once again, is always just right above that 200 number. The sugar in my blood or whatever, no A1C or whatever they call that, all of that's spectacular. It's always the cholesterol issue and so what we're going to try over the next, because this has been, a long time this is going on. I guess it can add up after a while, but I'm not increasing my dosage behind. I'm not starting my dosage. I'm not going to raise the dosage on Lipitor. We're going to try some fish oil pills. Man, those things are huge. And I'm going to take these 2 a day, and we'll see how that goes. And we'll get my blood tested in another 6 months or something like that. So there was that. And he also has me now taking some niacin as well. But overall, I'm a, pretty healthy guy. And I would say that I'm much better than average for your average 54-year-old. But I think one of the things I think that I've noticed over the last couple months is I've talked many times about my allergies and to dust and all sorts of crazy things. And my food allergies and my FODMAP issues and everything. I think I've discovered one more thing that I'm allergic to: soy. Pretty sure. Pretty sure. And I don't know if, the weird thing, the way my allergies work, it's a couple years ago when I used to eat hot dogs. I used to put sauerkraut on them. And this is no exaggeration at all. I got the hot dogs, I got the sauerkraut, brought them home, made them one night, fantastic. A couple days later, I ate hot dogs with sauerkraut again. I was allergic to the sauerkraut, could not eat it without coughing. True story. My body just flipped on something, boom, you're not eating sauerkraut anymore, just like that. So that's the way my body is, and I think that has done that with soy now for me as well. And it shows up in like the weirdest ways, but I'll just leave it at that. We don't want to get gross here. So, but otherwise, clean bill of health. just taking a few more pills. They're not, they're not prescription. He just said, get this over the counter and do what you can. So that was my doctor's visit. And, as a guy, I had my PSA, test, and that's low. It's like 0.4 or something like that. So I guess maybe possibly I'm going to be around here for a while. What's everybody saying? Marty's here. Everybody loves Marty. Sarah, are you behind? Just remember what I told you. Hit that live button. Hit the little thing over there that says live, and it'll catch you back up, Sarah, when you hear this, that is. Marty, Hazel said, I got my blood this week. My LDL is on the high side, too. Me and you together, Hazel. Me and you. And I follow FODMAP, too. It's just, FODMAP can get, ugh. I don't even like thinking about it. Stephanie, maybe you have a most stealth thing going on that can cause you to react to things sometimes and not others. I'm not sure what you mean by that, Stephanie. That's unfamiliar to me. Yeah, Marty. Rockford, typical, subtle, and on-time entrance from Mr. Speedman. Yeah, Mr. to you. Okay, Sarah, good. You're here. Good to see you, Sarah. All right. Yeah, you're all caught up. You're all caught up, Sarah. All right. What else is going on? Trivia team came in second place last week. We lost by 2 points. Really did not even have that great of a night, but we've closed the gap to first place, which is nice. And, we still have what? Are we halfway? Do we have 5 weeks to go? Do we have 4 weeks to go? I forget. The season ends the week before Christmas, and of course Christmas is on Wednesday, so it ends right before then. So we're in a good spot, I think. We'll just have to see. And I think we were down by 140 points. We cut that down to 60 some points last Wednesday. So we had a good night. And then also, I'm in this football picking league, and not too long ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, I was like in 7th or 8th place out of 30 players, so I'm not doing so bad. And over the last 2 weeks, and I think the winner was like 7 wins ahead of me. That win is now down to 3. I'm now in 3rd place, and I'm in 3rd place, and I'm only 3 wins behind the leader. So I think the leader has like 117 wins. I think there's a player with 115 wins, and I'm like 114 or something. All we have to do, no spread or anything, we just have to pick the winners. And what helped is that I got all but 2 games right this past weekend. And of course, the Texans and Cowboys are playing right now. And I picked the Texans. I think when I got on here, it was like they were up 14-0. So doing well there. And we're playing for big money there. I'm playing for big. We have like 30 players, $20 each. So it's $600 in the pot. And I think the winner gets half of it or something. So this is a serious game. And all of you know how I've talked about how much I love to win. Marty says, keep chipping away at the gap. Yeah, I'm going to keep doing that, Marty. This weekend was a good weekend. The leader, I outpicked the leader by 4 wins or something. So that certainly helped. And hey, what's going on, D? Good to see you. Good to see you, D. Marty says, my Bengals have killed my playoff hopes. Yeah, I watched that game last night, Marty, while I was doing some things, and they had their chances. The Chargers gave them chances to come back. They did not take them. So that's what's going on with me. Talked to my dad today. He's doing good. He called me while he was on his way to go play some cards. He and some other people in his community get together and play 500 or whatever. I'm not much of a card game guy other than poker. So is it 500? Is it spades or whatever they call it? He was going up to play that tonight when he called me. So he's doing good. And he's all excited. His team, the Slippery Rock football team, made the playoffs. And they have a home game this Saturday. And he will be there, of course. And sister, of course, all of you know Charles, who is in the chat. He, his mother, I got to see her and her husband, Jim, my brother-in-law. They actually came over to eat with us on Wednesday before trivia. And then they left before trivia started and they drove back to Ohio on Thursday morning. And they got there fine. And so it was great seeing her. I'm sure I will see them when I go up to Pennsylvania for Christmas. Haven't quite worked out the whole itinerary yet. Marty says defense is atrocious. Great win by the Chargers. All 6 of their fans in LA were ecstatic. There goes Rockford. Right on time, Rockford. Right on time, and your timing is impeccable. All right, let's move into all the personal stuff. I like to get through that stuff. I know some of this is interesting to some of you. And there is I always have some sort of funny story that comes out of me talking about going to the doctor or trivia or whatever else. Disc golf, by the way, I haven't picked up a disc since before Hurricane Helene. So I was supposed to play in a tournament this weekend. I withdrew. No reason for me to go if I'm not practicing. And plus I get my money back. So that's nice. And I'm going to just have to try to incorporate that into my schedule. I've been going to the gym, went to the gym today, feeling real good about that. And it's one of those things. Why did I ever stop going to the gym? When I'm there, I really feel like it's quality time and everything. And it's right downstairs. D asked me, hey, are you going to be busy the 11th of December? What day of the week is that? Well, 1st, 8th, 9th, 10th. That's a Wednesday. Wednesdays are usually trivia day, maybe during the afternoon or something, D, if you have something planned. Sarah says she went to the gym too. Everybody should be going to the gym. Me and you, Sarah. Me and you. All right, let's get into this. By the way, I did make a request for any particular questions. Anybody wanted to pick my brain this evening? Nobody, I don't think. Let me check this. Let's see if anybody decided to ask me a question or not. But if any of you have anything that's on your mind that you would like to ask me, please please let me know. Hold on one second. I need to reply to somebody. And okay. All right. So there you go. Somebody I'm supposed to be interviewing in a couple days sent me a message. Had to take care of that. Sorry. If any of you have any questions you'd like to ask me while we're doing the show tonight, anything, of course, we love to get into stuff about things other than disappearances. Feel free to ask. But I'm going to start here with of course, the Jonathan Hadden poll. I don't know how much of it was surprise to you that was a first time for Unfound, where I interview the guest and Joanne. And before the episode comes out, Jonathan found out in general what happened to Jonathan, that he did die in 1997. Seemingly something having to do with drugs, maybe a heart attack or something. I don't know if it was just a straight out, I guess an overdose, I guess could be a heart attack. But very sadly, he is no longer with us. But I think you could get the idea in the interview that I did with her, how thankful she was that Emily contacted her. Emily sorted those things out, and that's why, of course, I gave Emily a lot of praise on Friday's episode. And on top of that, not only did Emily get a lot of praise in the episode, but Emily got married last week. So Emily had a pretty good couple days. and she deserves every great thing that she gets, surely. But the Jonathan Hadden poll, I decided to have a poll question anyway. It was did you predict? Did you know that we were going to eventually reveal that Jonathan was found? And everybody who answered the poll said they did not predict it. Maybe that's surprising. Everybody, we get in this mode. Unfound only covers unsolved disappearances. And then I pull something like that. But had to do it. It's a great story. A sad story. But anytime we get into a situation like this, it's bittersweet. We know it's bittersweet. These people get what they want, but then they also get what they want, especially since most of the time we've, these people end up being deceased, whether it's a murder, an accident, suicide, whatever it may be. And I think at this point, Unfound has seen the whole range of possibilities of how people can disappear, why they disappear, from people still being alive to being murdered to accidents, suicides. We've seen it all. And with Jonathan, an overdose, we've certainly, I think, seen that before as well. Now, the think tank, and if you'd like to be a member of the think tank, like Sarah is, like Rockford is, like Marty is, like Kathy is, and several other people who are in the chat tonight, you can go to patreon.com/Unfound podcast and sign up at the premium level of $12 a month. And you get a lot of other things, of course, besides the think tank. But please consider it. It goes a long way to helping run this podcast smoothly. But in the think tank, I have to admit, really didn't even come up. And in fact, I think that the week before, some of you might correct me, but I think that some of the think tank members knew that what the outcome was for Jonathan Hadden's disappearance before I ever revealed it in the episode. But so we really didn't talk about that. What we did talk about was of several topics, but I'll just pick out one, is looking at this disappearance of Jonathan. Could it have been avoided? Or is there anything, of course, hindsight 2020, nobody's perfect. You're in the moment. Nobody expects a disappearance to happen to them. And you can maybe pick out those important points. Of course, the number one would be, when he got taken away by the police. Joanne freely admitted, just wasn't really on our minds to go see if he was in jail, if he was going to be let out, if he was found guilty or something. It just wasn't a concern. I get that, as she said, she just had a newborn at the time, and I'm not going to get into that because I don't have any kids myself. But it just doesn't seem like it's not that there wasn't any action taken. It doesn't even think there was any thinking about it either. Could say that they are the reasons. None of us are there. I get it. I'm not trying to necessarily judge, but if we're looking at, did this disappearance have to go this way? Maybe that's something, if it had been done differently, maybe he doesn't go missing. Maybe he still goes missing. Maybe just not in 1997. Maybe it's the 2000s or something else happens. The other point, of course, would be when Jonathan called and talked to Joanne in 1997. They had this very short call, and all he really wanted to know, I guess he found out somehow that their mother had died, and he wanted to know if he was getting any money. I guess he wasn't. And when he found that out, he was not interested in talking to Joanne anymore. Was this a missed opportunity? I guess you could say it was, being that she had him on the phone. Now, whether he would have answered any questions or not, who knows? Where you been, Jonathan? How are you doing? Do you need any help? How's everything going? Obviously, I think, if Joanne would have done any of that, I think she would have said so. But as we also talked about in the think tank, and this is one of those issues where if you're going to talk about a topic, you have to talk about it honestly. That I'm very open to the idea that Joanne's life, her mother's life, maybe any other people around there, maybe their lives got a little easier being that Jonathan wasn't around. Being that he, as what Joanne described, that he wasn't doing much with his life. He had issues. Of course, he was violent. And him going to jail might have been a relief for them. And think, well, he's in jail. We're safe for now. And, kind of out of sight, out of mind. And let's also it's possibility. And let's just admit, they're probably, even though we have mostly family members as guests on Unfound, I think we also realize that some of these people who went missing caused a lot of problems for their families. And I'm not saying the families wanted them to disappear, but I also know that at least for maybe some family members, their lives got a lot easier and more orderly because these people disappeared. That doesn't mean they're happy that it happened, but not everybody has survivor's guilt. So it's just something we have to keep in mind. Of course, we might when we start thinking that way, we might gravitate toward the ones with people with mental illness, people with addictions. Of course, we've talked about missing people who are stealing from their own families and everything. It's the way it goes. So I think that was what was going on, I think, with the Haddon family. And it's sad, but Joanne could not have been more thankful. And like I said, these situations are always bittersweet, no matter what the outcome is, except for like Brandon Roberts or Patrick Reed, who ended up being alive. But even in those situations, there was lost time. There was a lot of worrying. There's a lot of stress that went into those ones before they found out these guys were alive. So Jonathan Haddon, a Canadian disappearance, and it's been a real pleasure to get to know Joanne. And as you could tell, very, very thankful that Emily came along, and we're happy to help. So let's move on to, let's see what everybody is saying here. December 11th is your birthday, D? Okay. It's my birthday when? December 11th or today, D? We need to set a good example. Me and you, Sarah, going to the gym. That's right. So y'all be doing a live. All right, December 11th on her birthday. All right, I'll try to remember that, D. Do you still offer the class how to start your own podcast? I gave it a shot, Sarah. Did not catch on. Not that the things don't exist, but it's also one of those things, Sarah, really had it taken off. I don't know how I would have had the time to manage it, but it was interesting while I tried it. But right now, it's a back burner issue, and some other things have taken its place. Thank you for asking, Sarah. Good question. Marty says regarding Jonathan, the outcome was sad, but it's great. She found closure. He's no longer unfound. He's not. And like I said, if she offers up any more details, and if I can talk about more of those details, I'll tell them. I'll tell all of you. Marty says the think tank is a blast. Hey, if you can't believe Marty, you can't believe anybody. Thoughts about, Rockford says, thoughts about question of what other disappearances could be easily solved. What does it say that apparent walk-offs of less than spry adults, Albright, Schrader, aren't resolved? I don't know. Yeah, well, if you bring those two up, my interpretation was David Schrader was probably a little more capable of walking away than Alwyn Albright, but I get what you're saying, Rockford. What does it say? What does it say that apparent walk-offs of less than spry adults? Yeah, we could put, oh my goodness, can't remember his name right now, but David Hardy Jr. As an example as well. How far could he have gone? Of course, they're maybe easy to understand, Rockford, but searches in those areas are not, especially if you don't know what direction these people went. The searches then make it very, very, difficult. But I think, you already know my attitude. Certainly, those ones that you mentioned probably are easier to solve than Brian Schaefer's. Certainly, if we're looking at it on a scale. But I don't know how easy they would be going out there. Like I said, my attitude. You search them out in any direction. If you don't find anything, you keep doing it over and over. I forgot to do poll, but 100% knew he was found solely by reading into the way you framed that upcoming episode. You were crafty like that, Hazel. Rockford, does it suggest they aren't walk-offs, or could it be that the searchers were lacking or they made it to private property? Villarreal, man. It's probably a combination, Rockford, with David Schrader. If these ones that I think there are reasons, circumstantial evidence to believe these people walked off, Jason Landry. It's probably a combination of things of not understanding how to search, tough search area, private property, getting too a little extravagant or exotic about how far you have to go in any particular direction. I think it all adds up to a considerable percentage. Every little bit counts. You get enough pennies at some point, you start talking about real money. Rockford. Hazel, I didn't predict that it would have been such a quick demise, though. 1997, well, 8 years after he went missing. Okay. Mary Jane, our trivia host, was only 60 and he passed away last night. Oh my gosh. What happened? What happened to him, Mary Jane? All right, 11th Live. I'll try to remember that, D. Yeah. Hello, Julie. How are you? Good to see you. Kathy says David Hardy was so sad because his family should have taken away his keys. The police had to go find him several times. Yep. I've talked about this before. It's the toughest decision that, family has to make. You have an older person who wants his or her freedom. They've been driving since they were 15 years old, maybe even before that, depending. And they start getting lost and things. Yeah. And you try to take away the keys. Of course, there's a lot of things that go along with taking away the keys. Because once you take away the keys, then somebody has to start driving this person around. And that becomes work. If you care about the person, you have to take them to the doctor and all of these things. And if they are, if it's a mental thing, of course, some people can't drive anymore because their eyes don't work anymore. Maybe they might be able to get an Uber if you teach a 80-year-old how to use Uber or whatever, or call a taxi. But for the people who are losing their minds, somebody has to do this stuff for them. And I having dealt with that a couple years ago with my father, although he certainly got screwed over. He drives everywhere. And, it's no fun. It sucks. And it can be very ugly circumstances. So, yeah. But good point. Yeah. Good point, Kathy. Mary Jane, heart attack, 60 years old. Yeah. Well, that's what I'm trying to avoid, Mary Jane, by taking these fish oil pills and the niacin, and then continuing to take my Lipitor. But if nobody hears from me for a few days, somebody's gonna have to come in here, bang the door down. You'll probably see me sitting on the couch over there or something. So there you go. Hope everyone remembers to give this live a thumbs up. I hope so too, Marty. Thank you for reminding everybody. Yeah. But let's move on to this. The Dr. T show. I hope you checked it out. And as I stated, of course, I had to go over my notes for the show. Of course, I can talk about Bowman's disappearance, but when you really want to get into those locations and those times and everything, I have to have the notes to be prepared to do that. And, I've looked at the notes a couple times over the last, I guess, year and a half since he was found deceased. And I have to admit, even though I wrote the blog at Patreon and came to a certain conclusion that it was not foul play, it's weird. You give it a rest and you think about a bunch of other disappearances for a long time. And then going back to look at his disappearance, it's amazing how you look at it again. It's like, well, no, I'm not so sure about that. And I'm sure maybe if I look at the notes 6 months from now, I'll maybe have something, a totally different thought in my head. It's one of those kinds of disappearances because what was he doing that day? Where was he going? What are the odds that the address that was put into the Uber happened to be of a woman who had a drug problem, and that was Bo's specialty. What are the odds? And the gym was right across the street from where she lived, and the 911 text that went through Uber, it's not a cry for help. It sounds more like he thought he was using the regular texting on his phone and was texting somebody to just tell him, I'm in an Uber and it's gray. So every time you go and take a look at it, and of course, then there's the bank, somebody trying to get into his account, and that didn't work. Like I said, every time you go do it, you maybe see it in a different way. It's kind of like looking at one of those, what's it called, Rorschach or whatever it's called, test that they use. Some psychology test. It's like just a bunch of ink blots, and you're supposed to say what you see. And you look at one and you say, well, that's a dog. But you come back a month later and you look at the same picture and you say, well, no, I think it's a cat. That type of stuff. That's just the way Bowman's disappearance hits me. And like I said, it really stuck out last week when I was preparing myself to go on Dr. T's show. And as if you don't know, I'll be appearing 3 times with her next year or next semester. Is it January, February, March, or is it February, March, April? I think it's January, February, March. Of course, I'll get the dates for all of you. Always good to talk to her. So there you go. Coming up, another appearance for me is, although at least when it's done live, I don't think you'll get to see it because I think that this show is limited to this host's Patreon supporters. I'm going to be on the Silver Linings Playbook podcast. The host of this show is Jason Blair, and does a little bit of everything, but it does seem like over the past year he's really devoted to true crime stuff, disappearance stuff, especially with indigenous peoples, minorities, And although I've not gotten exactly an itinerary yet, we still have like a week and a half to go. It's no big deal. And you know me, I'm always ready to talk. He could get me the itinerary an hour before I go on, and I'm sure I'd come up with something interesting. I think we are going to be talking about the disappearances of minorities in the United States, indigenous peoples. I think that's going to be the topic. I'm sure there'll just be general disappearance discussion, but that was something that he mentioned because one of the first emails he sent me, he asked me, how many indigenous peoples, Native American disappearances have you featured? And really here in the United States, just a few, but we've done, a few in Canada too. And to me, it's kind of like the same situation. So certainly have some experience in that area. I'm guessing we're going to talk about, the complications. Is it more complicated if it's a minority? What issues are there? What can minorities do? Can they do to get more into the media? I'm guessing we're going to touch upon a little bit of all of that. But once again, it's Jason's show. What he wants to talk about is fine by me. Whereas like with Dr. Telesco, we kind of get together on what the topic is going to be. And then I do most of the talking. Of course, she just comes in at the end. I kind of get to pick it within the guidelines. Whereas I think with Jason, he's going to set the agenda. Fine by me. But I think the way that's going to work is it'll just be for his Patreon supporters. But my perception is that then it is played as recorded on, it gets sent to like Spotify and iTunes everywhere. I don't know when, a day later, a week later, I don't know. But I'm pretty sure that's the way he does it. And of course, now friend of Unfound, Julia Cowley from the Consult, she's been on his show multiple times to talk about the original Night Stalker and some other cases and things. So she holds that show in very high regard. And I think that is how Jason found out about me, by me appearing on Julia's show this past summer. Let's see what everybody is saying now. Hazel says, I missed the Dr. T this time. Well, all you have to do is go to YouTube and do a search for the Fischler College of Education and School of Criminal Justice YouTube channel, and you will find it there if you want to replay it, Hazel. In fact, I think there's a link in the discussion group on Facebook and elsewhere. Yeah, she did miss a good one. Yeah. Rockford says, one more thing about the man location you may not know is that you go from $1 million well-kept properties down the block to Santa Monica Boulevard, which looks so seedy, not unsafe, but what contrast. Yeah, I did notice that, Rockford, certainly. It's one of those things you have to kind of get used to. Even the house that Joanne lived in, Joanna, who, of course, lived at 1338, whatever the street name was. You look at that house and it's like no big deal. No, it's like a very expensive house because of the location. But you're right. You go out to the street and it's like, who wants to live here? You're right, Rockford. Dee Dee says, I've listened to the Silver Lining podcast. Well, look at you. You're way ahead of all of us, Dee Dee. Good for you. Julia says, hug stuff. Hello, Wenda. How are you? Good to see you. Good to see you tonight. Thanks for tuning in. All right, let's get to some of these. I need to get to some of the things in the title tonight so you don't feel like I'm a big tease. I want to start first with, let's see here. Where am I going? I'm going to start with the LA woman story first. This is very recent story. A search was continuing today for a 31-year-old woman who disappeared after landing at LAX, where she had missed her connecting flight. According to her family, Hannah Kobayashi was traveling to New York City to visit family when she disappeared. She landed at LAX on November 8th, but after missing her connecting flight, she apparently traveled to the Grove Shopping Center, where she attended a November 10th Nike event. So 2 days later, she's at this event, from which she posted a photo to her Instagram page. Her family says Kobayashi went back to LAX on the 11th, but apparently did not board a flight. It was on that day that the family says they started to receive strange text messages from her. Hannah's last message to us was alarming. She mentioned feeling scared and that someone might be trying to steal her money and identity. She hasn't been heard from since, and we are gravely concerned for her safety. An LAPD spokeswoman told City News Service the agency did receive a missing persons report about Kobayashi, and it is still an active case. No other details were provided. Family members most recently stated they had obtained surveillance footage that captured Kobayashi in the area of the downtown Metro train station near the Crypto.com arena, although it was unclear exactly when that footage was taken. The family indicated that based on the footage, it is evident that Hannah does not appear to be in good condition and she is not alone. Kobayashi's aunt, Laura Pidgeon, Pidgeon, told USA Today on Sunday the messages the family received from her were uncharacteristic, including weird things, calling us babe, things that weren't quite the normal way she speaks. And of course, what do we all automatically go to? Could somebody else have her phone? As I just read a moment ago, the most concerning part about that whole story, of course, is very, what's going on here. But anytime that, and I'm going to get into how she was traveling, which was a very strange situation. A woman goes off by herself, but then it says on video she was not alone. What does that mean? Did she get lured there? Was she communicating with somebody online and said, "Oh, you're flying to New York. Why don't you come put your, off for a couple days and come see me?" I don't know. Did she plan to meet somebody? I don't know. Or alternatively, something went on with her mentally and she kind of just strode away from the LAX. And, I guess you could do that. I've been to LAX. I guess you could walk away from there. You couldn't walk away from like the Pittsburgh airport. The Pittsburgh airport's out in the middle of nowhere. Whereas LA is kind of near other buildings and things off the property. I suppose you could do that. The question is, where was she? She went to this event 2 days later. Where was she? Where was she staying? Was she living on the streets? Nobody seems to know. But even before, I think these started getting, as they say, weird things, calling us babe, things that weren't quite the normal way she speaks. Even before that, before we might be thinking, well, does somebody have her phone? I think there's a good indication that something was going on with her personally. The issues we don't know is we need to know a lot more about Hannah. What's going on with her? What was going on with her? Well, here's one thing that was going on with her. This is something you don't read every day. But not long before this trip, she and her boyfriend had broken up. However, as a couple, they had planned a trip to New York. And they were on the same flight. So this flight where they, Hawaii to LAX, he was on the plane too. Did they sit together? I don't know. But so they have to change planes or something, and that's where she walked off. He didn't. He continued on. So if you're thinking, well, did her ex-boyfriend do something to her? No. He went to New York. Everything's fine. She's the one who missed the connecting flight. They had just broken up. They're on the same plane as a broken up couple, and then she goes missing. And, of course, is seen on video. Strange situation. Would have to know, does she have a history of mental issues? Now, I did go to Web Sleuths today because, sometimes with these really recent disappearances, you get friends who sound believable. Of course, web sleuths would never be something I would use as a source for doing the actual podcast. But for trying to learn something about a very new disappearance, that you may find somebody on there who knew the missing person or is from the area and they sound decently believable. I did see somewhere where some friends of ours said she had been acting unusual leading up to the flight. So, in 31 years old, it's just hard for me to say. My concern about this is, as you all know, or a lot of you know, I've talked about, 30 years ago, I had a fear of flying. And I eventually got over it. I can get on an airplane, no problem these days, and never did I attempt, use any drugs or, anti-anxiety medicine or take some sleeping pills. So I just go on monochromatically go to sleep. I did a cold turkey. No fun. But a lot of people don't do it that way. And if they do have a fear of flying, or they have, of course, you don't necessarily have to have a fear of flying, but if you have claustrophobia, the last place you want to be is on a plane. And some people do take drugs for that. They take medication for that. I'm not saying it's anything illegal or anything. You can get a prescription to kind of chill you out and everything, but you just never know how those drugs are going to interact with other things that you're doing. In contrast to like me taking my Lipitor medication, I don't even realize I'm taking it until I look at my blood work. Whereas with medication that is going to your mind, we know if it's not exactly correct, people are capable of all sorts of weird things and maybe even bad things. And so this is something that comes to my mind. Friends said she'd been acting unusual before the flight. Well, maybe this doesn't qualify then. But if she took some sort of drug to get her through that long flight from LA or from Hawaii to LA, and there was a bad mixture with something else or whatever, it would not seem crazy to me that she would just walk off and I guess by choice, but by accident. So, this is where I am right now. Like I said, I go back to, well, she thought it was on video and she's not alone. And we have to remember, I think the last sighting of her was on the 11th or 12th. We're now a week later. It's a week later. So, I don't know. You know what I'm reminded of? And, it's a European, I think it was Europe. It's a European disappearance, but it kind of reminds me, I know many of you are very familiar with it. And there's a very famous video of this disappearance. The guy that showed up for a flight, and while he was going through security, he ran off. And I think that disappearance is still unsolved. And I think that disappearance is at least 10 years old. And I know one of you are probably going to be able to, find that name. But there's a very famous, you can find it on YouTube everywhere, it shows him running just full sprint right out of the airport. Never seen again. I don't think Hannah was running, but this is a situation that I think of. But I don't think this is the only one. This is not the only story that I think I've read recently where somebody showed up at an airport and then walked away for some reason. Of course, we knew about that young couple that fled to Mexico. They were eventually caught because they fled with the child and everything. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about situations more like Hannah's. It seemed like we run into a couple of these a year. So, let me see what everybody is. You're doing good, Wendy. Good to hear it. Good to see it. Lindsay, hello to you. I expected you to mention Chanel Maya Banks tonight. Not on the agenda tonight, Hazel. Sarah says regarding Hannah, sounds really fishy to me. I know it's a very strange situation. I missed she went missing. Well, she went missing on the 8th, Wenda, but they have video of her from the 11th. And I don't think they have any video of her since then. So that was a week ago. Rockford, a lot of vagueness in the Hannah case. One article said she walked through a photo shoot on the Grove rather than attending an event. You walk out of LAX, and it's a great way to get cheaper Uber. All right, Rockford, you would know. Stephanie, I learned about her disappearance from one of her friends posting in a Facebook travel group I'm in. I've learned from posts in such groups that couples traveling together post breakup isn't uncommon. That's news to me, but nobody should ever take any of my relationship advice. Rockford, hoping for a much happier ending than Christina Elman case in Chicago. Woman flew from Chicago, California to Chicago, had mental episode at Midway, ended up wrong crowd and killed. I do remember that, Rockford. And Rockford says, Lars Mittank, right. Right. Was your airport sprint away case had been in a fight the night before. That's right. Yeah, all of you, if you're not familiar with the Lars Mittank disappearance from somewhere in Europe, right, Rockford? If you're not familiar with that, you should look it up. In fact, it might even have its own Wikipedia page at this point. You should look up and find that video after this show tonight, of course, on YouTube. And this is also what kind of comes to mind. You don't have to be a missing persons expert to know that it's just at this point with Hannah doesn't sound that great. I think if they had more recent video of her, let's say a video of a couple days ago, let's say the 16th, and she was in, like, once again at the Metro or whatever they call it, or somebody had a credible sighting and they went and a convenience store and they checked the video. Oh yeah, it's she, and she's alone and everything. It was just a couple days ago. Then we have a lot of hope. But with a week, and then it seems the last sighting of her on the video, she was, I guess it's a guy. I don't know. It didn't give the gender of who was with her. Just sounds not positive at this point. But this is why I say, I know that, maybe once in a while I get some crap for this, but this is why you can't use common sense to really, really understand these things. I may say makes sense or something like that, in a very general way, but there's no common sense that gonna explains this. Now, whatever she chose to do, I guess it made sense in her mind, but we're not in her mind. We don't know what she was experiencing that day flying, and when she got out at LAX, we don't know. Might have been made sense to her. Maybe. No. Sarah says, I will check it out. Yeah, you got to check that one out. Lars Mittank. That's some years ago now. And Rockford says, Bulgaria. Oh, yeah, maybe if I was in Bulgaria, I would run too. Yes, Amy says regarding Hannah, yeah, it doesn't look good. We, of course, always hope for the best. And I think we've all been surprised by disappearances that we think are not going in a positive direction. These very recent ones, they sound bad. And then, these people are seen, found alive. And that's good. Hello, Jill. How are you? Good to see you tonight, Jill. Thanks for tuning in from your desert landscape down there. Let me so that's Hannah Kobayashi, and it's gotten a lot of attention. Of course, when somebody goes missing like that from a major airport like LAX, it's going to get national attention, especially considering she was headed to New York. We'll have to all keep our eyes on that. Going back to some Unfound stuff. Unfortunately, it's very sad news. And this happened like over a month ago. And once again, I'm a little behind the curve on this, but it seems a lot of people were. It's very sad to report that the sister of Brandy Myers died back kind of in the beginning of October. Her name was Kristen Dennis. She also went by Kristen Thielen, Thelen. I was friends with her on Facebook. She did a lot of posting there. I would admit that I hadn't spoken to her a while, but you shouldn't read anything into that. We had no ill will or anything. Always ready to talk. I always held her in very high regard. Thought she always did a fantastic job keeping her sister's disappearance out there. And of course, just within this past year and a half, we know that Brian Patrick Miller was convicted of murdering several women, girls in that area. And there's every reason to believe that Brian Patrick Miller killed Brandy as well. It's just that her body has not been found yet. And this was a situation where Brandy was going door to door, and she just happened to knock on Brian Patrick Miller's door. But Kristen is no longer with us. Don't know many details, but somebody on her page said that it was some sort of accident, that she had a head injury from which she did not recover. I don't know what she was doing. Was she doing some housework? Was she climbing up into an attic of her house? I don't know. Did she have a fainting spell? Is this a situation like Bob Saget, the comedian, who was out on the road and, somehow hit his head, and then he went and laid down on the bed, and that's how he died? I know there's a lot of conspiracy theories about that, but I really don't know. I don't know. But it was publicly, it's a head injury. How it happened, I don't know. But she leaves behind children. And it was actually of course, I keep a database on all this, all the disappearances, the guests and everything. And I do have a section in there for guests who are now deceased. I think Kristen is now number 11. I can remember when there was 0. So that would be, what is that, roughly 3% of Unfound's guests are now deceased. So most of them natural causes. Of course, many of you, if you're going way back, of course, you can go back and listen to that episode. But maybe all of you who are listening to Unfound way back in 2017, when all those episodes were coming out, you remember, of course, Jessica Curtis, who was the first, unfortunately, the first guest to die. And she was very young. Of course, Kristen, at least compared to me, young. And then many others. Jennifer Wilkerson's mother. Could go on and, many. Donna Jean Cap. Many. So we have now 11. And what do I say? Some of you know what I say about this every time. It hurts every time. Even though, at least for none of these guests, I ever met them in person. But it hurts every time. And I think, the really sad thing is that all 11 died, and their disappearances are still unsolved. So, can't imagine. I mean, the family loses Brandy way back in, as Jill has put there, in 1992. And now 32 years later, another, her sister. Oh my goodness. So, like I said, I'm a little behind the curve on I think I was behind the curve on the last couple. When I find out, I let all of you know. And with the next update episode that'll come out at the end of December, of course, we will remember Kristen and Brandy again. So if you didn't know that, Kristen Dennis, also known as Kristen Thielen, died back at the beginning of October, so over a month ago. Rockford says, so much for Unfound being sponsored by Bulgaria. Trillers on board with that comment. Yeah, I'm not going to cross my fingers. Jill says, rest in peace, Kristen. Thank you, Jill, for answering Sarah's question. Jody, happy Thanksgiving. Thank you for all you do for Unfound. There's Jody Walsh, everybody. How are you, Jody? Good to see you in the chat tonight. Everybody should know Jody. Of course, Jody is Robin Abrams' sister. And man, it seems like just yesterday we met up in Illinois, right? Is that not correct? It seems like yesterday that we did that. And it's over 2 years ago now. Man, I just don't know where the time flies. But good to see you, Jody. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for I don't know how often you tune in, but good to see you in the chat tonight. Sarah says the guest from the Megan Landcast died. She did. I'm still not sure what happened there, Sarah. I was, of course, shocked by that. And that happened right after Mike Mirren. Was he convicted or whatever? So it was helping right in there. Like Katie, Megan Lancaster's sister-in-law, always believed that Mike Mirren had something to do with Megan's disappearance. I don't know if I necessarily believe that, but Mike finally got charged with all that, and then I think he died before he could even go to jail. And then Katie dies too, and she was not old, much younger than me. So like I said, I don't know what happened there. What the cause was, but she left behind children and a husband as well. I don't know, Sarah. Jody, much better. Had neck and spine surgery. Wow. I have one of my best friends just had some spine surgery done too, Jody. That's no fun. So yes, we sure did. We got together. Where'd we go? We went to a Cracker Barrel, right, Jody? I was up there for that disc golf tournament. We met halfway. I didn't think that was a Cracker Barrel. That was a good time. And you had your son with you, right? That was a good day, Jody. That was a good day. That was really spectacular meeting you. And Sarah, another fishy case. Megan Lancaster. Different possibilities there, Sarah, for sure. So Kristen is deceased, and Brandy still has not been found. Another topic that next Monday, I thought it was due for a brush up. Many of you know that about 5 years ago, just really for the heck of it, I went to talk to a lawyer about, the work that I do, about the way Unfound goes about its business, the way we cover these disappearances and the legal issues and the ethics and everything else. I had that talk about 5 years ago. I've decided I'm going to need a refresher course. So this Monday, I will be talking to that same lawyer. And I was thinking back to that time, just to put this all in context, that back then when I spoke to this lawyer, once again, there was no particular case or anything that I was worried about. I've been doing this for over 3 years. I've only been doing it for over 3 years at that time. Oh, those were the days. And I think I'd featured or covered about 140 disappearances at that point. And I went down there and just had an hour-long talk about defamation and everything else. And so much has happened since then. That was right after the Steve Pankey episode came out. That was right after my, one of my best friends of all time, Shay, was here. You remember all that. Some of you were around back then. That was right after that is when I had that I got together with that lawyer. We're going to do it again this Monday, but I'm not going to go to his office. We're just going to do it over the phone. He's moved his office up to Dade City, which is a little bit of a drive. So we're just going to, just brush up. We're now 8 years in. There are things going on, some work that Unfound is doing behind the scenes that I need to run past him. Some very important work that we're doing. Of course, I'm still dealing with Steve Pankey. I did not get any letters from him this week. And I just want to run by this lawyer. What's the best course of action regarding some of these things? So, yes, my naval chief son, Jeffrey. Yeah, you brag about him, Jody. You're allowed to brag. Go ahead and brag about your son. Go ahead. It's all good in here. So that'll be next Monday morning, 9 a.m. on Monday. That'll get me up nice and early on a Monday morning. Moving on, Jody Huisentruit. Of course, last week there was the search going on up there in Minnesota. And there was police from Mason City up there. There were police, of course, Minnesota police there. They were looking at a construction site where some bones had allegedly been found, and no human remains were found there. Bones were found, but they were determined to be animal bones. I've talked back and forth with Caroline Lowe, who was the guest for the Jody Huisentruit episode. I've known Caroline for about 8 years now. And I believe her. We don't, neither of us know how this tip got generated, why it was there, nothing. And the police aren't talking. So it could be anything. It could be a psychic. It could be some crank. It could be something on that range. Or it might have been somebody that actually thought, it was more credible. I guess, me with psychics and all that. Somebody was more credible. Why they would look in Minnesota, I don't know. I guess it's possible whoever abducted Jody could have driven her to Minnesota. Doesn't seem likely, but nothing came of it. And I'll tell you, it's easy, to be hindsight 2020, but there was nothing in reading about the coverage that really told me this is going to be something real. And we know, you all of you and many of you follow disappearances too. We all know how they get out there searching for people off some tip like 20 years after a disappearance occurred, and they don't find anything, and you never find out why they're looking there in the first place. We're just like our hands, shrugging our shoulders like, well, I don't know what's going on. So Jody's disappearance continues. The mystery continues. Probably one of the most well-known disappearances of a regular person in the United States. Of course, we're coming up on 30 years next year. Been a lot of unusual things that have gone on with Jody's disappearance over the years. One of the police chief ever had her diary. There was a billboard put up, and then it got vandalized. We have John Van Cise. We have all these other people. It's a lot to think about. And I'm still convinced that whoever took her was somebody who had become obsessed with her by her being on TV. I've convinced myself of that very well. Of course, I hope it gets solved and we find out what actually happened. That's where I am right now on this. I wouldn't be surprised if I'm wrong, but that's where I am right now. And actually, that's where I've been for a very, very long time, even well before Unfound got started. Rockford, sounds like they were pursuing the Jackson angle. Could be, Rockford. The Jackson Mr. Jackson is a person who, of course, Caroline Lowe, I don't know if she necessarily discovered him or something, but she certainly, I think, I don't know now, I don't want to speak for Caroline, but certainly there was a time when I think she thought he was a pretty good suspect. So that could be, would he really drive her the whole way back to Minnesota? Maybe. So, but, they had we have to remember there was that rap song that caused them to go out and look around farmhouses outside of Mason City. Remember that? I think that also had to do with that guy Jackson. I believe that theory too, Ed, regarding Jody. Okay. I think it's a popular one. I think it's, of course, there's a lot of John Van Cise suspectors, but just I don't think I've ever bought into that. Rockford, I think he's really good suspect, rap song or not. He has one heck of a record. I know. They've checked him out. Of course, you can't rule him in, as Caroline, I'll never forget the first time she said this. Yeah, can't rule him in, can't rule him out. But nothing has come of that. But was it even a real tip? I don't know. Let's move on to this because it is something, me and my themes and theories and ideas that just kind of pop into my mind. And if you're into the Myers-Briggs test, this shouldn't surprise any of you because I am an INTP. We are known as the absent-minded professors, really good putting facts together. We're really good coming up, looking at facts and coming up with theories and things. That's one of the things that INTPs are good at. That's what I am. I've taken that test, I don't know, 7-8 times over the course of my adult life. I haven't taken it recently, but at different periods, going back to like my early 20s into my 40s, maybe 7-8 times, always an INTP. It's never wavered. And this is just something that comes to my mind. And it came to my mind, I first sent Jeff Wise, of course, expert on the disappearance of Flight 370. I'd sent this to him a while ago. And so I want to just kind of air this out for all of you. I know a lot of you think Jeff is full of it when it comes to his particular theory, about Flight 370. Totally fine. But it's interesting to me because what he's been doing on his new show on YouTube, he has been interviewing like people who specialize in currents, people who specialize in how snails grow on things that float out in the ocean. He's really been getting into it because it all plays a role in determining, looking at that debris that floated up there on the east side of Africa. And was it really out there all that time? Was it really in the ocean the whole time since the plane disappeared? Or did somebody just put this piece of aluminum or whatever in the ocean a month ago or something? And so he's really been getting into that. And so he's been doing a lot of science, really talking to scientists and getting them. And I think they do a good job. They try to keep it simple, even though what they're talking about is biology and growth, periods of growth for organisms and everything. And it's just interesting to me that what I've told Jeff is that the more that stuff is done, there's nothing against him. I agree with all these people. I think it's fantastic that he's finding these people to talk to. At some point, though, I have to admit, I start wondering, is it really science? Or is it just opinions? And really where this comes in is of course, the ping data that the plane was giving off. And Jeff has, of course, made the argument, could that ping data have been forged, faked by somebody? I'm not telling you to believe it or not believe it. And so then I started thinking, I hear all this science, about the pings, about currents about, and then I start thinking about, of course, these disappearances that we feature on Unfound every Friday. And I start thinking about how there are many things that have been accepted over many years regarding disappearances that are considered science, but they're not. And I wrote this to Jeff, and I was telling him, you know, you have all these people saying it's the science, it's the science, it's science. And the more they talk about it, I start wondering, is it really science? Do these people really, 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 really know what they're talking about when it comes to these pings? Do they really, really, really know about organisms that grow on airplane parts that are floating out in the Indian Ocean? Or is there a lot of wiggle room or anything else? So, because I would compare it to some of the topics we discuss on Unfound quite often. For example, phone pings. What have we learned about phone pings? It's science. It's certainly technology. It's certainly, if people from the Middle Ages came to the 21st century and saw us talking to each other 3,000 miles away from each other, they, on these phones, they would think it's magic. It's technology. But when it comes to the pings and all of that, you realize that it's kind of science, but it's not total science. It's not as consistent. It's not something that you can rely on time after time after time, unlike E equals MC squared. Something like that. But a lot of people, I think, just take that for granted. Well, the ping was here, so the person must have been here. But I think we've had at least a couple disappearances, maybe being that I brought up Brian Schaefer's. Remember, his phone allegedly went off somewhere, like in a nearby town or something like that. Was it real? Was it fake? Nobody knows. Even though cell phone, everybody has a cell phone these days. And it's considered science. And most of the time our cell phones work. And we can email each other and we can call each other and text each other and do banking on our phones and everything else. But then when it really gets to the fringes, it seems there's a lot of wiggle room when you start to use these pings and other information for things for which they were not intended. Remember, ping information is, how do I put this? Ping information does not exist for the purpose of solving disappearances. We use the information to maybe investigate disappearances, but that ping information, otherwise, I don't know how important it would be to anybody. And it's the same way, kind of going back to Flight 370. Those pings that they're using to try to figure out where the plane went, those pings were never intended to do that. So they're kind of like reverse engineering the whole thing. And so that's what's kind of going on with cell phones when we hear about pings. The more and more you hear about disappearances, the more and more you find out ping information, it's not like Law and Order. It's not quite science, where it's something happens over and over and it's consistent. Something else. I mean, how many times have we heard about polygraphs? Now, we know that's not science. We know, all of us know this. There's a reason that is not allowed in court. But what should be distressing to us is that police actually use lie detector tests to guide investigations. Using this box with the needle and everything as if it's science, as if it is reliable. It's a reliable tool to solve crimes. It's not. Yet they use it. But that's considered science. They shouldn't be listening to that. But I would say they consider that to be science. And this is kind of what I was telling Jeff in this email, that, I see a lot of these things and I compare it to my own work with just, what we call everyday disappearances in contrast to a plane going missing in the Indian Ocean. So there's that. And then if we really, really wanted to go to the extreme, there are a lot of dog handlers will tell you, dogs sniffing out people, it's science. It's not. It's not science. If we used that level of science to build bridges, no bridges would get built. But we know that, and I love dogs. I've been through this before. I love dogs. I don't have any. I'm not, I'm all about solutions. What have I said before? I'm for what works. I'm not for what doesn't work. Dogs don't work. Why? Because it's not science. Even though the people who train them and everything else will say it's science. And the real problem, as I've brought up on this live show before, is drug dogs. Are we sure they really smell drugs, or is that really just a way for a police officer to get inside a car? I wonder. It's not science. So this word science gets really thrown around loosely, I think, in disappearances when we start thinking about pings and dogs and lie detector tests. None of it is necessarily reliable science. Unlike when we think about metallurgy and the atomic bomb, if you saw Oppenheimer, I did see Oppenheimer. I didn't even talk about that. It was good. I wouldn't say it was a spectacular movie, but that's science, making things work time after time after time, being able to, these things are not science. And, the point I was making with Jeff is that maybe the reason they can't find the jet is because, yes, it did go into the Indian Ocean, and people are afraid to admit that what they've been specializing in isn't necessarily science. It's more like if you go to see your doctor and the person is not really a doctor. I wonder, is this me called the Doubting Thomas part of me showing tonight for all of you, everybody? And once again, everybody, remember to give this video a thumbs up as you're watching. We've got about a half hour to go. So that's why I wanted to talk a little bit about science. And I just wonder, I've told Jeff that what if one of these days the plane is found in the Indian Ocean, on the bottom of the ocean? They show it's been there since the day it went missing, but it's nowhere near where all the pings said. That would not surprise me at all. It wouldn't surprise me at all. And that somehow they were using data to track this plane when really the data couldn't be used that way. Even though they're calling it science, it's not. Rockford, I think he's really good suspect. Rap song. Okay. If you want to start a debate in the Schaefer verse, just mention his phone pinging in Hilliard, Ohio, weeks after his Columbus disappearance. Yeah, I'm not going to spend any time on that. You can be my surrogate on that, Rockford. Sarah says, I gave it a thumbs up. Thank you, Sarah. So that's what I wanted to talk a little bit about science. And I hope over the last 8 years that I've opened all the audience's eyes to this. That the way kind of some of these things have been accepted for decades now regarding the investigation of disappearances. Of course, searches aren't scientific either, even though by law enforcement and other people connected to law enforcement, they represent this stuff as hard, cold fact-finding using science and everything. Not true. Not true. It's exaggerated. Sarah says science is not exact. No. I mean, certainly we use science. I mean, obviously we know a lot about science. We know about stuff. We build things. We destroy things. We heal people and all sorts of things. We understand how to use it. And there's things that are very reliable. But when we're talking about science within the disappearance community, unless you're talking about DNA or forensics, which of course we ever hardly mention on Unfound. Other than that, it's not really science. It's just statistics. I'm not sure what to believe about lie detector tests. I would say to not trust them, Sarah. All right, let's go to this New Mexico mystery. This is a wild story. I don't know if all of you saw this or not. The dog exercise in the Fleischman case is Exhibit A, and don't trust dog handlers. Yeah. Hey, Cindy. How are you? What's going on, Cindy? Good to see you. Thanks for tuning in. We only got about 25 minutes, but it's good to see you. This is a wild story out of the state of New Mexico. What is it? The land of enchantment. Law enforcement officials in Gel, New Mexico, are investigating the discovery of multiple human skulls, including one that authorities have connected to a woman's disappearance in 2019. The Lee County Sheriff's Office said that a resident on November 5th, so 2 weeks ago, reported having an unsettling encounter while giving someone a ride. This is bizarre. The resident said that their passenger, who had 2 bags with him, made alarming statements and discarded objects from the vehicle, some of which appeared to be human bones. A search of the area turned up bone fragments, officials said, with a pathologist confirmed were human in origin. Searches of a home where the man had been staying turned up additional bone fragments, including evidence of 10 to 20 human skulls, according to the sheriff's office. The remains are now being analyzed for potential identification. The sheriff's office said the case is closely tied, quote unquote, I don't know if I'm supposed to believe this or not, but we are going to talk about her disappearance, to the 2019 disappearance of a woman named Angela McManus, McManess. Her last known address was near the man's address, where many of the skull bone fragments were discovered. Authorities are working diligently to determine the connection between the remains and McManus, as well as other possible victims. I think what we need to make clear is there hasn't been any DNA done on any of these bone fragments to connect to Angela at this point. Of course, this is very, very, very early on, and this isn't TV where they get DNA back and, evidence back in like 42 minutes. The man is not currently facing any charges, according to the ABC affiliate. Law enforcement officials are working to determine the origin of the bones, which the man reportedly said he bought online. Okay. The investigation is ongoing, and anyone with information is being asked to contact law enforcement. So the reason her name is Angela McManus's name is being mentioned is because this guy did not live too far away from her. Now, you may be asking, well, what were the circumstances? Tell us a little bit more about Angela McManus and her disappearance. I'm going to do that right now because I looked it up. I'll read something from a Facebook page that was written a couple years ago. Then I will read an article that was written at the time. So exactly 2 years to the day our lives forever began to change, I received a phone call from the Gel Police Department about dogs running around in Angela's yard. Attempts to contact Angela had been unsuccessful. My family were in Ruidoso, which is a place where we've covered a disappearance on New Mexico, for birthday celebrations. We hurried home to discover Angela was indeed not home. Many, many calls and texts were made to everyone we could think of to see if Angela might have been visiting someone. Again, unsuccessful. Since then, we continue to search for Angela. Our hearts continue to be heavy and broken as we look to find you. And it says, please, after 2 years, so this would have been written in 2021. If you've heard or known any information, no matter how insignificant you may feel it is, that little piece of information can mean the world to Angela's family. We appreciate anything that sheds light into finding her. Please contact the Lee County Sheriff's Office at 575-396-3611 and ask to speak to Investigator Brown. Well, here is the article that was written when she went missing in 2019. So let's see what we can get out of this. It comes from Gel, New Mexico. Is that how it's pronounced? J-A-L. The New Mexico Department of Public Safety and the Gel Police Department are looking for a Gel woman missing since May 13th, once again of 2019, and asking the public for help. Gel Police Detective Mary Montez said Angela Dawn McManus, 43 years old. She also went by Angel. Was last seen wearing a gray t-shirt and pink sweatpants. McManus is described as a white female, 4 feet 11, short woman, weighing between 90 and 100 pounds, with hazel eyes, dyed black, short hair. Montez said family members reported McManus missing on June 18th, so over a month after she went missing, after they were unable to contact her through friends and family with whom they thought she may be staying. Angela McManus lived alone and was in bad health at the time of her disappearance, Montez said, noting that the missing woman has 3 children living with an aunt in jail. The night before the report was made to police, Montez said the children went into their mother's house after not hearing from her for some time to retrieve some of their belongings from within the home when they noticed possessions that Angela would not leave home without. The detective reported the children found items that included McManus's only bra, diabetic medication, money, her glasses, cigarettes, and other personal items. She would not be expected to travel without. Her cell phone was also discovered in the house. So the picture we're getting of Angela is not a great one. Did she have drug issues? Did she have mental health issues? I think that's all on the table here. McManus has a history of traveling to stay with friends and family members, Montez said, offering a reason for the delayed missing persons report. The next morning, after none of the family or friends of the family had any information on Angela's whereabouts, they came to the station to report Angela missing to law enforcement. When no leads came from immediately adding McManus to the national database for missing persons, the jail police department contacted the New Mexico State Police for investigation assistance. Any information or tips you reported to the jail police department immediately. You can call 575-395-2501. Additional description of McManus includes a number of tattoos, a black Tinkerbell tattoo, a black angel tattoo, the word sexy tattooed in cursive on the back of her neck, a smiley face tattoo on her right ankle bone, and a red-eyed tree frog tattooed on her left calf. So to put this all together, these stories together, the first one with the guy with all the skulls, and then this one. So somebody picks up a hitchhiker or somebody, and the guy has skulls with him. Person, of course, thinks that's pretty weird, calls police, they go to check him out. And of course, like I read in that article, he says that, he bought those skulls online. Can you buy skulls online? I have no idea. But he hasn't been charged with anything at this point. But the reason this was then brought to Angela McManus is because he lived somewhat close to her. What does close mean? I don't know. Does that mean next door, or is it a mile away? I don't know. So that's why her name got brought up in that previous article. It was not because, to reiterate, it was not because they did any DNA testing or anything that says, oh yeah, one of these skulls is Angela. Not true. Now, will they eventually be able to figure out who these skulls are? I just don't know. I don't know what to think of this at this point. Really, if I heard this story, I guess I would just dismiss it as some sort of urban legend, but it's not. Now, I will tell you though, just putting the guy with the skulls to the side, Angela seemed like she had a lot of problems. Like I said, drug problems, mental health problems, somebody else taking care of her children. The kids are living with the aunt. They're going back over there to get stuff. And in fact, it even says she was in bad health. Was it just good old fashioned bad health? Was she dying of cancer? Was she diabetic? What? And he wasn't taking care of herself, doesn't say. But being that, what catches me, and not to put too fine of a point on it, but in this one place, it said, Angela McManus only had one bra. I'm not a woman, but that sounds kind of unusual to me. So like I said, I think there was something going on with her. And so then that makes it more probable that she could have just walked off into the night and died, and she's out there not far from where she lived and deceased, and this other guy had nothing to do with it. Unfortunately, we could look at this the totally opposite way, in that if she'd had some mental health problems or something like that, I guess a guy who's toting around a bunch of skulls might be somebody that Angela might hang out with, and then something went wrong. Is this guy a serial killer? I doubt it. The feeling that I get with this, my best insight is this is just a coincidence that this guy lives not far, or it lives close to her. But maybe we'll find out eventually. But anytime you hear a story about multiple skulls being found, I mean, I got to talk about that on the live show, right? Of course I do. So there's that story. I don't know if anybody has heard about that story or not, but that certainly caught my attention. What's wrong for the dog exercise and the Fleischman case is Exhibit A, and don't trust dog handlers. I have to admit, Rockford, I don't remember the specifics of what happened there. Maybe you, if you want to, you can maybe type out just a few words on that to explain it. Like I said, I don't remember. And Brian, hey, just got here. Well, good to see you, Brian. We only have about 13 minutes left, but it's good to see you. What are is there something else that I wish to talk about here? I suppose we could go. You're going to find this interesting. Of course, just recently, we covered the disappearance of Joe Bushling. Remember, Lex Bell was the guest. He is now the police chief of Moab, Utah. He looked into Joe's disappearance about 3 years ago. I thought Lex did a fantastic job with his interview. Seems like a good guy. I think the citizens of Moab are in good hands with him as the police chief. He did what he could regarding Joe's disappearance. And like he expressed, in the interview, he wished he could have done more, but I guess the money ran out, or he just worked on it a couple months, never did get to speak to Brandon Springer. There were a lot of other things he wanted to do that he didn't get to do. And we have to remember, he was a police officer for many years, had some physical issues, so he couldn't be on the job for a while. So he ended up being a private investigator for like a year, and then he's gone back. Of course, now we know he's back into law enforcement. Good for him. Now, here's the interesting part. In that episode, I stated, at least just slightly, that I covered Joe's disappearance despite his father and I not getting along very well. And I wrote about it on Patreon. I'm not going to get into it here. It's water under the bridge at this point. But I think the point was that sometimes these people need help that they don't know they need. And this is really on my mind because of something that's gone on over the last 24 hours that I don't want to get into. Sometimes these people they think they need something, and they really are not educated enough. They don't have an experience enough with how all these things go to really know what they want. And that is when I spoke to Joe's father and we didn't get along. That's kind of what I came away with him. Everyone have a good night. All right, Raymond's out of here. Thank you, Ed, for everything you do for him. Well, Raymond, you're very welcome. Thank you for saying that. Thanks for joining in tonight. Good. Thank you for making some time, Raymond. So I did this episode not to spite him. I don't want anybody to think. I just know, you know what? This is a disappearance that needs attention. I'm not necessarily inclined to think that it was foul play, but as you know, I don't care. And of course, Lex got to come on and he even got to talk about it. His own report. We followed his own report for his interview. And in that interview, he said that he believes it's foul play and he was allowed to say that. But I don't want anybody to think I just did that to spite Kevin. I did it because I thought this is exactly what Kevin needs. Even though he could not provide it in doing an interview with me, I still thought I was doing the right thing. And tracking down Lex and in the conversations I'd had with Kevin, even though they didn't last very long, he spoke very well of Lex. And I thought, you know what? If I track down this Lex Bell guy, I don't think I knew he was a police officer at that point. I didn't even know where he was. I had that report. I actually got that report from Kevin, Joe's father. I did not get Lex's report from Lex. It was actually Kevin who gave it to me, emailed it to me. So I guess his contact information or something was on there. But I knew that interviewing Lex was the right way to go about doing this. This is something that I thought that I'm going to do this the right way, even though Kevin had some choice words for me. Where I'm going with this is that today, now that episode's been out for like a week and a half. Today, November 18th, 2024, the sister of Kevin Bushling, Joe's father. So Joe Bushling, the young man who went missing, his aunt, she emailed me telling me that she thought the episode was wonderful. She thought it was excellent. In addition to that, she said that Kevin also listened and he also thought it was very well done. I'm here to tell you, you just never know how things are going to go sometimes. I wish I could tell you more about the last 24 hours, but I'm not going to do that. To, kind of compare and contrast some different stories. But here was a guy who didn't want to have anything to do with me as much as any person who I've ever spoken to on the phone in 8 years of doing Unfound. I decide, you know what? There's just something about it. So I think this has to be done. It has to be done the right way. I'm not doing to tick the family off. I'm not doing to kick Kevin off. We're going to do this in the best way possible. And it paid off. And I really, and I'm happy to do it. There's no ill feelings. If they thought I did a great job, fine. They did. Of course, they did not have to contact me. I, of course, knew doing the episode that Kevin or somebody else's family might run across the episode sooner or later. I didn't email them a link or anything. And you don't know what to expect. Am I going to get hammered again? And instead, it went in a totally different direction. And this is what I'm talking. When you talk about helping people, a lot of these people, of course, they're emotionally scarred and everything else. Sometimes you have to do things for them that they don't know that they need. And even if they're complaining about this, they're complaining about that, they have fears and everything else. I'm now in a position where, I'm in a position of authority. It's not like I've demanded to be here. It's not like become a dictator or anything. But after 8 years, 350 disappearances, you should know something about them and how all of these things go. And this is, this is a perfect example of what I was trying to express in the Joe Bushling episode. It had a one-word title, help. And it really made me feel good because, like I said, there was something else that was going on that like is totally the exact opposite. So there you go. I thought you might find that interesting, given that episode just came out and the tone of it and everything. There you go. They really liked, and like I said, I thought that it would be okay, given that I was interviewing Lex, who Kevin thought very highly of, probably because he and Lex think the same thing regarding Joe's disappearance. I thought, I think this is the best way to do it. And I'm happy about it. And like I said, no ill feelings. I'm here to help. I always say that. I'm here to help. I'm here to give good advice. There's no ego involved at all. The problem is some people think they know more than I do, and they're usually wrong, and they end up regretting it. And, giving into things. It's a mistake. It's just a mistake. Rockford, to sum up a long story, Reggie and I are of the belief that the dogs were led rather than the other way around. That's how they got to Cordelia Park. This is all for Kyle Fleischman, by the way, from Charlotte, North Carolina. The location of alleged sighting, I remember that. Rockford, Kathy agrees with you. Rockford, it was very well done, the Joe Bushling episode, and good on Kevin for saying so. For the record, I lean toward his conclusion, away from his cover-up accusations. Bad investigations are common, Rockford. Thanks, Kathy. Reggie has done some great write-ups following her Unfound interview. I've collaborated on them to give her full credit. Yeah, she was good. Love to encounter people who devote their spare time to these disappearances, and they're going about it, of course, the right way. Maybe we think of like, oh my goodness, the coworker. I hate when I go for a name. I must be getting old or something, everybody. But of course, Reggie. Of course, Reggie never knew Kyle, but all you have to do is watch that interview or listen to it to know that Kyle Fleischman's disappearance, at least when it comes to amateur sleuths, is in very good hands. I was thinking of Julie Weflin. And of course, John Paulus, don't agree with some of his conclusions and everything. But once again, a great, amateur, going at it. So, all right. Well, we've come to the end, and that means this Friday's episode. I already have the name of it. This Friday, we're going to be featuring the disappearance of Tatiana Lupich, but her last name is spelled Lupaca. She was a young woman. I think she was 27, just like I guess Jonathan Haddon was. And she came to the United States from Latvia in the summer of 98. And she was married. She had 2 daughters. And the plan was for her to come over here to New York City. She knew somebody here. She was going to get established. And then her husband and her 2 daughters were going to come also to the United States using the proper paperwork and everything. And they were all going to live here in the United States. Well, Tatiana came here, was living in New York City. I think she might have lived in Brooklyn. In fact, I have told Dr. Telesco that we're doing a New York City disappearance this week. But she got here in July or August of 98. But then in January of 99, I told this person that she knew there in New York City that she was taking a trip to Miami. This would be on her second trip to Miami since coming to the United States, and she's in New York. And she did talk to her on the phone. She talked to her mother or aunt that day, and they said that Tatiana sounded rushed, like somebody was hurrying her to do something. But she said that, she was going to Miami, Florida, and would be back. And the thing is, what's interesting about this, she was on the verge of getting her citizenship. The papers that she needed to fill out to begin the process to become an American citizen arrived in her mailbox just a couple of days after she went missing. But she went missing on that day that she called and sounded hurried. And her daughter, Ilana, who was, I think, 7 years old at the time, is the guest. And of course, I'm going to call this episode Coming to America. So we're going to look at foreigners who've come to the United States and disappeared. But she went missing. After that phone call, never heard from. Again, no idea. She went to Miami, and it's still a mystery 25 years later. So Tatiana Lupic, but it's Lupaca. She went missing on January 25th, 1999, from New York City, New York, technically Brooklyn, I guess. And her daughter, Ilana, is the guest. She did a fantastic interview. I listened to all of it today again. She did a fantastic job. That's all I got for you tonight. Before you leave, give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe to this channel. Consider subscribing on Patreon if you could, or hit the join button below if you're watching on YouTube. Keep your heads on swivels out there. And Charlie, say hi to the kids for me. Good night. You're welcome, Rockford.